Caenis, also known as Caeneus, Tyrant of Thessaly and Mordred's partner in crime. But what about the Caenis of Fate Grand Order? How well does he compare to his mythical counterpart? And what grade would I give his depiction? Let's do this. So, regarding pronouns, Caenis is a complicated case. A character who was once a woman, was transformed into a man, might have left behind a female corpse, and now, as a servant, well, they are named Caenis, which was their name as a woman as opposed to Caeneus, their male name. But despite the fact that the FGO servant is using the female name and is in a female body, I'm going to use male pronouns. That's the identity Caenis seems to prefer, the one he chose in his myth, how Kirstaria referred to him, and notably, for Valentine's events, Caenis gives a return gift, something exclusive to either male or gender-neutral servants. I know this is tricky. I understand if people would choose differently. Please don't kill me for this. I'm a weirdo who likes history and games. I'm not an expert on these things, and I have no desire at all to get involved in culture wars. Anyway, let's continue. Caenis is a Lancer-class servant, which is the best choice for him. Caenis was known as a spear wielder, is regularly depicted in art with a spear, and, most of all, it plays a key role in the myths about him. I'll be giving more detail about that when I get into the backstory section. Just know that, for now, Lancer is a solid choice for Caenis. Getting into his character design, normally this is when I talk about gender if a character has been flipped or if questions need to be answered. But Caenis' gender is so heavily tied up with his characterization that I'm going to wait until after I've gone through his backstory. So starting with his first ascension, and the one where Caenis wears the most clothes, I don't know what this is supposed to be, but it's definitely not ancient Greek. His second ascension gets closer to that, with Caenis now carrying a spear and hoplon, the classic arms of ancient Greeks. In his third ascension though, the divine core of Poseidon goes active, portraying Caenis not just as the Tyrant of Thessaly, but with considerable influence from Poseidon. The spear is now a trident, his crown is trident-shaped, and the end of the chain has an anchor on it. One more thing, in Greek myth Poseidon isn't just associated with the sea, but also horses. Legends say that he is the one who introduced horses to Greece. And since Caenis seems to have horse ears for some reason, Caenis and horses having a mutual link to Poseidon is the only answer I can come up with for that. Now you may have noticed that Caenis isn't wearing much clothing in these other ascensions, and considering how well built he is this more fan service? Well, that almost certainly is a factor, but this is actually a case where the designers can get away with that. The reason why is because part of the gift Poseidon gave Caenis is to give him an invulnerable body with great strength. So kinda like how we saw with Roland and we'll later see with Achilles, Caenis can get away with wearing next to no armor. Overall, I'd say Caenis' design is okay. It gets better as you move up his ascension forms until it reaches his peak with the third and final ones. Though, the more blatant links to Poseidon presents another issue, one I'll be talking about once we get to his craft essence. Moving into his skill set, Caenis' first skill is Monstrous Strength, a large boost of strength which you normally see on monsters, demons, or quirky paladins of Charlemagne. This fits Caenis because part of the power that Poseidon gave was to make Caenis incredibly strong. Caenis was a formidable combatant in the legends, one of the mightiest warriors of his day, and that power was being enhanced by one of the 12 Olympians. Technically it might be better to name this skill Divine Strength, but this will do. Caenis' second skill is the Usurping Spear, which refers to a specific moment of Caenis' legend. After becoming Tyrant of Thessaly, Caenis planted his spear in the Agora, the central plaza or meeting place in a city, and ordered his people to worship that spear instead of the gods of Olympus. Obviously this pissed off the Olympian gods, notably Zeus, leading to what would become known as the Centauromachy, the battle with the centaurs. This skill also represents Caenis' tyrannical nature in general, a tendency to take what he wants. Though, while Caenis is called a tyrant, as I'll get into later, there's not much detail about that part of his story. There's plenty about the beginning and end of the Legend of Caenis, but little about the middle parts. Lastly, Caenis' third skill is Poseidon's Blessing, which not only is it one of Caenis' MPs, it's the best known part of Caenis' story, the compensation Poseidon gave Caenis after assaulting her. Caenis asked to become a man with great strength and invulnerability to harm, and even if Poseidon didn't like it, he at least had enough decency to keep his word, if only he was decent in other ways. Anyway, that's why this skill gives the servant Caenis a damage cut in the guts, representing how the Caenis of the legends was incredibly hard to kill, though it did end up happening. And speaking of which... Caeneus' noble phantasm is Lapithai Caeneus, whereupon he leaps into the sky, transforms into a phoenix-like bird, and then slams into his enemies. This MP refers to the moment of Caeneus' death, when he was pummeled into the ground by centaurs, suffocating to death. There are many versions of what happened next. Some say that the male Caeneus left behind a female corpse. Another version is what this MP refers to, that Caeneus transformed into a bird and flew off. Now, they didn't say Caeneus turned into a phoenix, only that it was a golden-winged bird, which is more or less what we get in this MP. I just thought it kinda looks like a phoenix. Flaming birds and all that, you know? As for the name, Caeneus is the male name Caeneus took on after the incident with Poseidon. Also, Caeneus was one of the Lapith people, a legendary tribe living in Thessaly. Combine these two and we get the name Lapithai Caeneus. Of course, there is another version of this legend that the centaurs didn't actually kill Caeneus, that he is still there, buried in the earth, waiting until someone digs him up. Maybe Caeneus is slowly crawling through the earth and will emerge once more, to cause even more chaos in today's world. Beware. Caeneus' craft essence is Sea God's Trident, featuring the trident that Caeneus wields in his third and final ascensions. Obviously, this is a reference to Poseidon, since a trident is Poseidon's signature weapon and symbol, and Caeneus' connection to Poseidon has already been established. With that said, Caeneus never actually wielded Poseidon's trident, or any trident at all as far as I know. So while Caeneus does have a very clear connection to Poseidon, Caeneus wielding Poseidon's trident as a weapon is not part of the myths, nor is the idea that Caeneus became a divinity or wielded the divine powers of Poseidon. Caeneus, or rather Caeneus, was mortal, a mortal with exceptional strength who was virtually impervious to harm, but a mortal nonetheless. Everything we have in Caeneus' fate depiction that has him being a divine spirit, that's not in the myths at all. Caeneus' Valentines CE are slightly burnt croissants, depicting exactly what it says. This is an obvious reference to Lost Belt 5.2, Olympus, when Gorodolf decides to bring Caeneus some croissants, despite the fact that Caeneus was an enemy who regularly expresses murderous rage. And since I'm going to have plenty to talk about with Caeneus' characterization later, let's talk about this now. Why might Caeneus, after all of his talk of wanting to murder everyone in Chaldea, then proceed not to after being rescued and fed some croissants? Well, that's because Gorodolf ended up becoming the beneficiary of something that the ancient Greeks held dear, xenia, or hospitality. It's a concept we see in many cultures throughout the world, that a host should take care of their guests, and that guests should reciprocate that goodwill. Like other cultures that have something like this, the Greeks took xenia very seriously. People who violate this tend to get into some very serious trouble. It's actually one of the causes for the Trojan War. Paris didn't just run off with Helen, the wife of Menelaus. He did it when he was a guest of Menelaus. We may see xenia, Greek hospitality, come up again in future videos, such as the ones on Circe, Odysseus, and Achilles. Anyway, having Caeneus react the way he did to Gorodolf's hospitality, despite him and Chaldea being enemies, that was very clever on the part of the FGO writers, to have Caeneus act in a way that would have been appropriate for the standards of his time and culture. Now for characterization, starting with a look into the myths surrounding Caeneus. The origins of Caeneus, or Caeneus, date back to sometime in the 6th century BCE. Originally in Greek they were known as Caenis, or Caeneus, but in the Roman poet Ovid's gigantic 1st century poem Metamorphosis, he changed their name to Caenis, or Caeneus, and Ovid's version of Caeneus' legend is now the one that is best known to us. Caeneus was the daughter of Elatus, king of Gerton in Thessaly, with both Caeneus and her father being members of the Lapiths, a legendary tribe of people living in Thessaly descended from a man named Lapithes. Lapithes also had a brother named Centaurus, who would engage in some adventures with horses, resulting in the race of centaurs. Remember that, it will become important later. Caeneus was said to be extraordinarily beautiful, attracting the attention of many suitors. Caeneus refused them all, but then one of those suitors refused to take no for an answer, the god Poseidon. Being a Greek god, Poseidon stayed true to his character and proceeded to do something horrible. There are some versions of this story that say that this wasn't just a one-time thing either, that Caeneus would bear Poseidon 3 sons. After having finished his crime, he decided to offer to do something nice for Caeneus, saying that he would grant her one wish, anything that she wanted. What Caeneus asked for, though, was not what Poseidon expected. She asked to be transformed into a man, one who would be immune to harm and have great strength. Whether this was a long-desired wish for Caeneus, or because she never wanted to experience this situation again is not clear. Whatever it might have been, Poseidon granted her wish. From that point on, the woman Caeneus was dead, and the man Caeneus was born. However, while there are extensive details for the early and later parts of the Legend of Caenis, there are surprisingly few details about the middle parts. Caeneus is said to have taken part in both the Caledonian boar hunt and then joined the crew of the Argo, but there are no real details beyond Caeneus simply being present. This isn't as weird as it sounds. There are at least 50 named characters listed as part of the Argo's crew, and not all of them got starring roles. I've already talked about the voyage of the Argo in my videos on Jason and Medea, and I'll be getting into the Caledonian boar hunt in my future video on Atalanta. Quick reminder for all of you to check out the channel's community tab for updates, polls on upcoming videos, or just weird posts by yours truly. Anyway, Caeneus was part of the Caledonian boar hunt and the Argo's voyage, then went back to Thessaly and took the place over, becoming its tyrannical ruler. But the only detail I could find about Caeneus' rule is that bit I mentioned in his second skill, demanding that his people worship his spear rather than the gods of Olympus. But Zeus didn't exactly like Caeneus usurping his authority, and Greek myth loves to have those who display hubris, excess pride, to have a meeting with the goddess Nemesis, divine retribution. The instrument of this retribution would be the centaurs, who found themselves invited to a wedding between Pirithous, king of the Lapiths, and a woman named Hippodamia. This wasn't entirely strange. If you remember from earlier, the Lapiths and centaurs could trace their ancestors to two brothers, so they were all technically cousins. Caeneus was also among the wedding guests, as is the subject of another future video, Theseus. Anyway, it was a wedding, so people were having a good time celebrating, partying, and all that. This wasn't a Game of Thrones wedding. But the centaurs, who weren't used to human wine, ended up drinking a bit too much, and so ended up becoming more like their usual selves. By which I mean, they tried to abduct the bride and several others. The Lapiths obviously weren't thrilled about this, and so, well, now it is a Game of Thrones wedding. What followed would become known as the Centauromachy, the battle with the centaurs, as both sides brought their friends to join in the battle. Caeneus naturally joined the Lapith side of this conflict, and he quickly proved to be unstoppable, slaying many centaurs. And yet, thanks to his invulnerability to weapons, the centaurs couldn't so much as scratch Caeneus. Nothing they did seemed to work. Quick note to throw in here, some of the centaurs made a point of deliberately misgendering Caeneus, calling him a woman, but all that did was earn them a spear through the head. Eventually, the centaurs came upon a solution. If Caeneus couldn't be armed with weapons, then he needed to be killed in some other way. Using uprooted trees, the centaurs surrounded Caeneus and proceeded to beat him into the ground, literally. They just kept pounding until, eventually, Caeneus was buried into the earth. While Caeneus couldn't be harmed with weapons, it's my understanding that breathing while buried alive is rather difficult, so it proved for Caeneus. After this, several different versions of the story emerge. That Caeneus' corpse turned back into the woman he once was, that he turned into a golden bird and flew off, or that, somehow, he's still buried there. In another story, Virgil's Aeneid, when its hero Aeneas visits the underworld, he finds Caeneus there, but having returned to being the woman Caenis. Regardless of what might have happened, the Lapiths were enraged, slaughtering half of the centaurs by the time the battle was over. Though he had fallen in battle, Caeneus would be remembered as one of the mightiest warriors of his day, and, in modern times, has become something of a hero for the trans community, being someone whose gender changed, and yet was able to not only be accepted by society, but to become one of its great heroes, enough so that we know his story 2,600 years since its first telling. But while he may have achieved his greatest deeds as a man named Caeneus, in Fate Grand Order, Caeneus finds himself as he does in some of the myths, returned to his former body and being once again known as Caenis. And since he was summoned by Kashtaria Wodim, who runs the Atlantic Lost Belt, not only does Caenis find himself in his female body, he's also in the company of the Olympian gods, including Poseidon. Being put into that situation, to be reminded of unpleasant memories, bound in service to another, and to do so in a realm dominated by the Olympian gods he so despises, that sounds like Caeneus' personal hell to me. Little wonder that Caeneus has a very short fuse, ready to engage in violence at the slightest provocation. Had Caeneus been summoned into a male body, and not had such direct interactions with the Greek pantheon, I suspect that he would have a much less volatile temper. A temper bad enough that Caenis has EX-ranked Madness Enhancement, because of the chance he might get so angry that he might murder his own master. The only consolation to all that is, the master he ended up with is Kashtaria Wodim, who is not only courteous and respectful to Caenis, being one of the few to use male pronouns, but he also has a hidden agenda he's keeping from everyone else, everyone except for Caenis. As we later find out in Olympus, that agenda is to remake humanity so that every human is effectively a deity, to make everyone functionally equal, to make killing impossible, and so create a more peaceful world. Since making all mortals into gods would ruin the ability of the 12 Olympians to lord over mortals anymore, Caeneus is fully on board with this, seeing it as the best revenge he could ask for. Because of this mutual goal, Caeneus is very loyal to Kerstaria, even after he basically threw Caeneus to the Dioscuri after losing to Chaldea in Atlantis. Yes, Caeneus did team up with Chaldea for a while in Olympus, but only until they reached Kerstaria and Caeneus was able to rejoin him. And before that, what was Caeneus helping Chaldea with? To carve their way through no fewer than 3 Olympian gods and their lackeys, enemies that Caeneus would have gladly killed anyway. As for Caeneus' personality in general, it is largely inferred rather than taken directly from the legends. You only get fragments of his personality from the myths anyway. But the personality traits we do get in Fate's Caeneus at least make sense based on what is found in the legends. The moment when Caeneus plants his spear into the ground, telling his people to worship that spear rather than the 12 Olympians, is that the act of an arrogant tyrant or of someone who just hates the Greek pantheon? Fate seems to go with both, that Caeneus is haughty but also deeply hates the 12 Olympians, and understandably so. His wish to be turned into a man so that he would never have to experience what Poseidon did again, that explains several of Caeneus' other traits. That he hates being a victim, will do whatever it takes to not be one, gets angry if people take pity on him, and hates bending to any authority, especially divinities. Caeneus does seem to mellow out a little after Olympus and being summoned to Chaldea, but he is still coarse and someone you shouldn't piss off. At least he's found a kindred spirit in Mordred, another character with an aggressive personality, less severe gender issues, but also someone who has been able to calm down after having some time to sort through things. I'm not sure what future events Caeneus may feature in, but at the moment his character arc looks very similar to Mordred's, that Caeneus will gradually mellow out now that he no longer has to face the unpleasant combination of circumstances he faced in the Atlantic Lost Belt. And now for the verdict. What grade would I give Caeneus' depiction in Fate Grand Order? Well, his character design is okay. It gets better as you move up his ascensions, gradually looking more like someone actually from Greek mythology. His skill set is much better, with very good links to his legends. With that said, there is a problem seen in his ascensions, and in particular his Bond CE. The fact that they gave Caeneus an even closer connection to Poseidon than he had in the myths. Caeneus was turned into a man and given an invincible body immune to harm, but he didn't become a master at sea to be elevated to the point of becoming a divine spirit. Caeneus was not a god, or even a demigod. The power Poseidon gave him made Caeneus much more powerful than your average mortal, but he was still a mortal. But it seems that, since the developers already decided to put Caeneus in a female body in the Atlantic Lost Belt, identity issues and dealing with unpleasant memories was already going to be a major aspect of his character. Making Caeneus have an even closer connection to Poseidon by giving him extra powers from him only compounds those issues further. It's not true to the character, but I can see why they did it from a narrative perspective. The other thing is that I wish more was said about Caeneus' part in the war against the Centaurs, the Centauromachy. I had no idea that it was part of Caeneus' story until I started researching for this video. Perhaps this is an opportunity for a future interlude. Overall, Caeneus in FGO gets many things right, but also gets many things wrong. It's not a great depiction, but it's not terrible either. And so for a final grade, I'm going to give Caeneus, the Tyrant of Thessaly, a C. If you would like to learn more about another character with a quick temper, check out my video on Mordred here. Until next time.